Oof. Got a sugar rush after all those jelly babies. Let's go on a bit of a health kick. Enter the Fifth Doctor. Hello Whovians and welcome back. Yes, welcome back after a 2-month hiatus. I have had a break and I am now back to review Doctor Who once again for you. Woo! With a brand new Doctor. I start reviewing the 5th Doctor, Peter Davison, with Castrovalva. Castrovalva, the 116th story of Doctor Who ever. And it is also Peter Davison's very first story as the 5th Doctor. And it's actually the first story of season 19 of the show. So, yeah, it's quite an iconic story for a number of reasons. Okay, let's get into it. So, the basic plot of Castrovalva is as follows, and I mean basic. The Doctor's latest regeneration has proven more unstable than his previous ones. His 2 assistants, Tegan and Nyssa, help him recuperate on the tranquil planet of Castrovalva. Adric has been captured by the Master, who is taking advantage of the Doctor's weakened state to ensnare him in an elaborate trap whose recursive nature threatens to destroy his mind. As the Doctor begins to recover, he realizes that the Master's trap for Adric is even more intricate than he could ever have imagined, and that he will stop at nothing to gain his revenge on the Doctor. Okay, that's the basic plot of Castrovalva. Castrovalva, well, I gotta say, considering this is the very first story to star the 5th Doctor, Peter Davison, this was the best they could do? I mean, really? I don't really like Castrovalva. I just couldn't get into it. I'm sorry, it's just a very dull and boring story. I mean, there's nothing remotely bad about it. It's harmless, but it's just boring. I couldn't get into it. Also, it's a very convenient Doctor Who story. Like in the first half of this story, it's basically set in the TARDIS for the most part. The Doctor is sort of recovering or readjusting to his new body. And there are just a couple of moments which are just too convenient for me. There's a moment where he looks in the mirror, and next to the mirror is his new costume. Kind of a bit, convenient that it's there for him to just change into. And then the other moment is when he's sitting underneath a medicine cabinet. Again, very convenient. So I don't know what J&T was on trying to do that, but those parts for me just don't work. Also, what doesn't work is when Peter Davison is trying to impersonate the previous Doctors before him. He says things like, "I'll reverse the polarity of the neutron flow." He grabs his lapel and he does a William Hartnell impression. He even does a Patrick Troughton impression. He tries to do a Tom Baker moment as well at some point. So I don't see why they're doing this. I know the Doctor is kind of discombobulated and whatnot after he regenerates, but to me, that just feels a bit cheap. Like, why are you trying to remind us of the previous Doctors when we have this new guy who's trying to settle into his own, body? And that's, whatever. It's one of those little things. I mean, speaking of which, Peter Davison, he doesn't really get to do very much in this story. He's kind of there for the majority of it, but for most of it, he's kind of lying down, or he's jittering, or he's kind of recovering from his regeneration. I just don't really buy Peter Davison as the Doctor in this story. He's just, after Tom Baker, it's such a come down. I know this is only his first story, and there are still 19 more Peter Davison stories to watch and review. But Peter Davison has never been one of my favourite Doctors. I'm going to be completely honest with you. But I look forward to watching his era, I'll say that. But, I mean, I know this is his first story, so I will be fairly lenient to him here. He definitely tries to give a performance, but I just don't know if it's really that interesting, to be honest. Most of the story is helmed by the companions, and that's Tegan and Nissa. They're okay. I mean, I'm not a great fan of Tegan and Nissa, but I mean, I certainly don't mind them. I mean, Tegan, this is only her second story. I mean, she only appeared in the previous story, Legopolis. So it's nice to have Tegan get more of a central role here, and actually now would have been a more perfect time to introduce her because Tom Baker left in the previous story. So I don't know why they brought her in Legopolis, but whatever. Tegan and Nissa actually do have a sort of a decent rapport together. I don't mean that in the sense like they're married or anything, but they have a good on-screen chemistry together, and they helm most of the story, so they barely keep this afloat. Just. Also, Matthew Waterhouse as Adric, this is easily his worst performance so far. There's I'm laughing just thinking about it. There are moments in this story where Matthew Waterhouse is strapped up to this giant web-like thing, and he's like, "It's a trap! It's a trap! He said a trap!" It's just terrible. His acting is so hammy, and he's just kind of like, they've turned Adric into a damsel in distress in this story, and he acts it. He overacts it to the hilt. I mean, Matthew Waterhouse was never the best actor in season 18, and in here he's not much better. I just found that very laughably bad. And when we get to Castrovalva, there really isn't much going on. Like, Castrovalva, all it is, it's like this medieval castle with like a place of rest. And when we arrive on the, well, it's supposed to be a planet, but when we arrive on the planet, it's just like a forest. There's not much else. And yeah, they're kind of just, there's just so much window dressing in this story. It just takes so long to get going, and nothing happens in this story. Nothing happens. You know, the first half of the story, Tegan and Nissa are trying to transport the Doctor in his tiny little Zero cabinet to Castrovalva. And what was the whole point of the Zero room if it was just going to become the transportable cabinet? Like, what the hell? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, this story reminded me a little bit of The Christmas Invasion, which is the David Tennant story, where David Tennant is asleep for most of for the most of his first story, and then he makes a big appearance at the end to illustrate that he's the new Doctor and he's here and he's coming. With Peter Davison, it seems to be a very back and forth thing. One minute he's okay, the next minute he's all discombobulated, and towards the end he does start to recover and he does start to kind of get more involvement in the story, but it's too little too late by that point. And also, Anthony Ainley is totally unnecessary to this story. The Master did not need to be in this story. I don't know why he's in it. It makes this story feel like an epilogue to Legopolis. And I suppose it was meant to be that. I suppose that was what they were trying to go for. But it doesn't work for me. There's nothing happens in this story. It's a nothing plot. I mean, the Castrovalvan supporting cast, their costumes are ridiculous. I mean, when they have those big colourful masks, they look like they're masks from a tribe or something. It just looks really weird and over the top. It's just silly. Like, it's just completely silly. The third act is lame. It's abrupt. It's over too quickly. I just didn't think that there was much of a transformation by the end. Like, the Doctor's regeneration was apparently failing, even though he's already regenerated. Yeah. So, I guess the Doctor was sort of going through some of the side effects of his regeneration, and by the end of the story, we're meant to think, okay, the Doctor is finally back to normal. He's in his new body. He's ready to go on some new adventures. But this is really weak for an opener to a season, as well as the beginning of a new Doctor's era. Peter Davison's era is not long. It's 3 seasons and a special. This is not a good way to start his era. I'm sorry. I mean, Legopolis was not the perfect ending that we wanted for Tom Baker, but it was way better than this. I found it completely boring, and the script by Christopher H. Bidmead, what script? I mean, it's a script without substance. It's like they literally couldn't think of what to do. It's like, I mean, this is a filler story. This story is a timekeeper. It's filler. It's just there to fill in the blanks. I don't believe Peter Davison truly begins his era until the next couple of stories. I'm assuming that's how it's going to be. I don't know about the next story, but everybody seems to hate the next one. At least that's to my knowledge. I might be wrong. Fall to Doomsday, I think a lot of people don't like it. If I'm wrong, correct me down below. So I've potentially got a couple of stories before Davison's era really kicks in, and I just didn't feel like this story really gave Davison the edge to kind of get going on his adventures. It was a very limp story, and it was very badly directed as well. Who directed this? Fiona Cumming. I'm really sorry. I just didn't think the direction worked. I just thought it was too sloppy. It like characters they just didn't know what to do. It was a mess. It was a complete mess. So I'm sorry to be a downer, but honestly I don't know what else to say. Well, I like the performances apart from Matthew Waterhouse. Like again, Tegan and Nyssa are very good in this story. The supporting cast do give good performances. I suppose the set of the castle is very good. Castrovalva is very good, and the whole kind of all the visual effects with the time trap towards the end in the fourth part of the story are very good. But the pacing is slow, it's dull, it's boring, not much happens, and Anthony Ainley doesn't need to be in this story at all. And some very bad acting from Matthew Waterhouse. So it's a bad one. It's a bad egg. I'm sorry. So I guess I will finish up by scoring Castrovalva. I have to give it a 3 out of 10. I was thinking about it as I was watching it. I wasn't really sure what to rate it, but I think 3 is I can't really be more generous than that. I'm sorry. This isn't really a rant. It's just kind of a negative review. There's a difference. I'm not shouting or being too detrimental. I'm just being honest and being critical. So, yeah. But if you like Castrovalva, that's fine. Tell me why down below. So, that is my review of Castrovalva. And it is good to be back. It is good to be back reviewing Doctor Who again. I look forward to continuing the Peter Davison era. And also, when I've done Davison's era, I'm going to continue into Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy and Paul McGann. Well, Paul McGann's only got one film and one short. So I'm going to go from now to the end of Classic Who before I next take a break. So you're going to be stuck with me for quite some time. Anyway, thanks very much, and stay tuned next time when I review Fall to Doomsday, the second story, in this season, and that will be the 117th Doctor Who story. So, until next time, so long for now.